again, so that we don't lose focus of what we're addressing here, the issue was raised by Brother L. Why is it you go out to Oakland County and you find that there's no diversity in the workforce? There is some in certain areas, but again, going back to over 34 years ago, I was brought out there by the then county executive, Dan Murphy, to address that very issue. The issue is, he said, hey, look, Frank, we got a situation here where we're being attacked, for lack of a better word, by organizations and people in the community about the fact that there's no diversity. Now, one group is saying it's because there are no qualified people in the community and so forth. And he and I both agreed that there were qualified people, and I was charged with the responsibility of actually bringing those people forward, going out and recruiting those people. So I was hired at the county in 1985 to actually address that very issue. And we put in place a variety of projects and so forth to address that issue, including recruitment in areas where they typically have not recruited in, again, through the churches, through the community organizations, to wherever it's necessary to go to actually address the issue and find people for these various jobs. So
we got, if I may, can you hear me? Can you hear us at the table?
Yeah, I can hear you up.
You good to chime in or listen to be a part of?
Hey, Joe.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah.
This is Arthur C. Bay.
This is Frank, Russell, L, Lamine. But again, with Joe, we were just addressing the issue that Prince posted about lack of diversity at the county workforce. And I was telling him how I was hired, brought forth to actually address that issue. And the county at that time was willing to actually do some things to actually address the issue. In fact, they put resources behind it as far as monies for positions, monies for recruitment, and so forth, under the previous to Brooks Patterson County Executive, which was Dan Murphy, who actually is a Pontiac native. In fact, a little history on as far as basketball, his son played on the basketball team with Ted, my older brother, and in fact, he was one of the last Caucasian fellows to play on Pontiac Central's basketball team, and he was a pretty good player. But anyway, so Dan Murphy knew our family. We had a relationship. He knew what we was doing as far as trying to do things to improve the community and so forth. So we were again brought aboard to address the issue, and we did a lot of things. Most of the resistance that we received came from people in the community, because the mentality was that, hey, them Republicans out there, we don't want to talk to them. We don't want to have nothing to do with it. And my position was, hey, look, this Republican Democrat thing is nonsense. The resources at Oakland County belongs to us because we taxpayers. So we need to do whatever we need to do to actually get those resources for the city of Pontiac, including recruitment monies, come out. At one time, you had a situation where people would not come out to the county because they had this stigma that, hey, this is something these Republicans are running thing, they don't like us and so forth, which is the furthest thing from the truth. Now, there's pockets of ignorant people on both sides that help create this situation. But so what we did, we put in place a variety of programs, and again, resistance really came from, again, people who had a vested interest in our people really staying ignorant and staying divided and not taking advantage of the resources that was available. So what happened, I was labeled as some Republican who's trying to turn everybody in Pontiac into a Republican, which is, again, is more nonsense because and let me give you an example. We had a meeting when I was first hired. This was back in 1985 with all of the so-called leaders in the community at our house on Earlmore Street. At the meeting, the position was, it was related to a congressional race. It was Bob Cobb versus Tom Ritter, who actually is another Pontiac guy who was running for Congress. So at the meeting, my position was, look, all of you guys, you're on the Democratic side. You actually are in a position where if Bob Carr wins, Pontiac wins. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to go over here on the other side here. So if Tom Ritter wins, Pontiac wins. So it's win-win for Pontiac. If the Democrat wins, Pontiac wins. If the Republican wins, Pontiac wins, because we've got relationships with both sides so that we can actually get some resources. And politics is really about getting some resources to help whatever your situation is. It ain't about all this blind loyalty to some ideology that really don't have us in our best interest in mind, except if we push it. They'll do what we actually compel them to do, either side. So out of that meeting, they immediately came out of the meeting declaring that Frank Russell's trying to make everybody into a Republican. That's what he's trying to do. I said that again is nonsense, and we spent years trying to combat that situation. So fast forward, we continued to work. We got to the point over the years where we actually were able to get people in key positions at the county to address the lack of diversity. We actually started the Oakland County Employment Diversity Council, Raheem, which was an organization that started with 3 members: St. Joseph Hospital, Kelly Services, and Baker College. And then that group over the years expanded to about 350 groups and organizations throughout the county. And what happened, we got so effective at recruiting and bringing in people, the problem now became, and this was something that was told by me by the director of human resources, the manager in human resources. Her name was Kathy Shalal. She says, Frank, we're going to have to remove you from this position because you've been too effective at recruiting people and getting them on the list. Because the way it works at the county, you have to go out and take a test. You get on the list. If you're in the top group on the list, then when a job opens up, you actually are considered for the position. And what was happening, we got so many people in the top 5 on those eligibility lists to be hired that the then county attorney, what was her name? The county, Judy Cunningham, who was the county attorney, and there's a specific position that she holds. I can't think of it. Anyway, what she did, she basically corporation counsel. She was corporation counsel at that time.
What year was that?
This would have been.
The Oakland County Employment Diversity.
We started the Diversity Council in 2000, and again it grew, and the recruitment happened, and because we got all these groups involved in helping us to find qualified people. Bottom line is, we became so effective at this, got so many people on the list that the county now was receiving, according to Judy Cunningham, was receiving threats of lawsuits because you got people on these lists, still no black people or so-called minorities are being hired.
That was probably Wallace Parker at that time.
Yeah. Well, Wallace went out there and jumped up and down and done some screaming and yelling and so forth. And then, so once they made that decision, again, they said, you got to go from the standpoint. They then transferred me out of that position and put me in another position, basically sitting behind a computer and doing testing and writing job descriptions and all that kind of stuff. But so the effort was there. And the results were being shown because we were getting people on the list. There was a trickle